Should Nashville take a look at Patrik Laine? How many NHL minutes do we expect to see Phil Tomasino play? And what are realistic expectations for next season? Let's discuss all that on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this mailbag episode with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everyday listeners who tune in Monday through Friday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support, and we love that we get to spend just a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
On today's show, Emma and I are continuing our mailbag episode. We got so many great questions from everybody. So we are tackling some more mailbag questions. We're going to talk about any potential for a fit with Patrik Laine here in Nashville. We're going to predict Phil Tomasino's NHL time next season. We're also going to tell you what we think Nashville's cup window may be. But before we dive into all of those great questions you sent us, we do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, Emma. So this has been a hot topic for several days. Patrik Laine and the Columbus Blue Jackets kind of announced that they are willing to mutually find maybe a better fit for the young player, Patrik Laine, 26 years old. This is news that Pierre LeBrun broke last week and said, they've just got mutual interest in parting ways. So as you said on yesterday's episode, anytime there is a free agent, anytime there's whispers of a trade, Nashville enters the chat. Why? Because Nashville has the fat wallet right now. So let's take a look at Patrik Laine in a fit with the Nashville Predators. Of course, last season only played 18 games, 6 goals, 9 points. He was injured for part of the season with a broken collarbone, and then he did enter the NHL Players Association assistance program in January as well. But this is somebody who has had a 44-goal season back in 2017-18. He has oftentimes scored, 20-plus goals in some seasons. So can be a goal scorer. What is the upside and the downside to a potential fit in Nashville when it comes to Patrik Laine for you, Emma? What's kind of your initial reaction to this idea?
I think my initial reaction is I don't love the price point at 8.7 million. But I think that, it, like you said, this would be a change of scenery move for him and, for the Blue Jackets. I think it's a kind of a mutual decision, but I think, I don't know, he's still young and he's big and he's dynamic when he's healthy. He has a bit of a history of not being able to stay healthy. And, that could be for a variety of reasons. But I think that with all the draft picks the Predators have in the upcoming draft, I think that the cost to acquire him from Columbus won't necessarily be an issue. Mm-hmm. But I do think that that Columbus would have to retain some salary on him for me to even consider that. It's a lot. You've mentioned it earlier in the week, that $8 million mark gets people a little twitchy in Nashville. Yes. We don't like those. Now, again, his contract is up after 2025, 26. But again, if he's a guy, we talked about how timing is everything. Is he, are the Predators going to make a serious run at a Stanley Cup in the next 2 seasons? No. So correct. If you're going to spend that much money on a guy, you would want him to be able to make a significant impact in the time that he is with the team. And not saying he couldn't make an impact, but I just, to me, there's too much unknown and too much inconsistency with the price tag that he comes with.
The price tag is a huge hitch in the giddy up for me as well. We're talking Philip Forsberg money here, people. And while it is just for 2 years, and you can say, hey, you know what? Especially if Columbus were to retain salary, we could take this guy out for a spin for 2 years and see what happens. You need somebody for more than 2 years if you are looking for a bigger fish to be an impact player to get Nashville into a deep cup run, which is something we're going to talk about later in this episode as well, kind of a time frame for that. I love that there is potential for another big goal scorer with Patrik Laine. The other thing that I would say, and I mean this as a compliment for sure to the Nashville Predators, if you have a player who is looking for a change of scenery, if you're looking for a player who's been through the players assistance program, who just feels like they need a fresh start, Nashville is a good landing spot for a couple of reasons. One thing I go back to, I was able to have a conversation with Mark Borowiecki last summer about a different story that I was writing, but we talked a little bit about Nashville. We talked about, mental health, talked about just the pressure that players feel and how that may manifest is different for every player. So I certainly wouldn't want to speculate on anything specifically with Laine. But this is an organization that has worked with players who have been through the player assistance program, who have come back and found a very supportive organization, a very supportive franchise who is mindful. Mark Borowiecki said, look, Nashville is one of those teams that is on the very forefront of understanding mental health, struggles of professional athletes, and creating an environment that is conducive to health. And so, you think, man, Nashville could be a really good landing spot for a player who has kind of been through that and is looking for a fresh start. I like his age. I like 26 years old, somebody who could grow up with the team. But again, you come down to cost. The other thing is we have to remember that Nashville is still evaluating what they have. And to bring in a big fish right now, you don't 100% know yet what you have in the pipeline that you may have self-grown. It may be a homegrown potential. So for me, it's a risky move to bring Patrik Laine into Nashville right now. It's a big risk with a significant price tag. I think there's some upsides to it. It's a big price tag.
Yeah, definitely a big risk. I mean, it's a big risk to bring in anyone, right? There's always unknown, but I think with the price tag, and like you mentioned his age, I like his age too, but if he's making 8.7 at age 26, it's only gonna go up from here. And so I just don't, to me, it's not a risk that's worth taking right now.
Yeah. I like what you say about the price tag because in 2 years when this contract expires, that's going to be his I want term and I want cash contract. Like that is his window for the big contract. And let's say Laine comes to Nashville. It's a great fit. He is very productive offensively. There's a little bit for him defensively where I'm like, you could maybe be a little bit more effective defensively, but that's something Andrew Brunette I feel like can work on with people. But is Nashville in 2 years going to want to say, hey, we know you were here on an 8.7 contract and this is your big contract, but we really would like to offer you like 7. That's not going to fly. Even if he comes here and he's successful for 2 seasons, you then have to be committed. If you feel like you need to keep him for a cup window, you need to be committed to shell out a lot of cash. And I come back to, you have to be somebody really extraordinary for me to want to pay you more than I pay Philip Forsberg. As if it comes out of my own wallet. It does not, but you know what I'm saying.
We act like it does.
We act like it does. It feels like it does.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. If he was at a lower price tag and you think, sure, why not? Like take him for a spin and see if it works out, but not, I just think it comes with too much risk, not enough potential reward for me. I mean, he can play center, but he's been primarily played on the wing. The Predators don't really need wingers; they need centers, and
Yeah.
so I think that that I see why people would think, hey, maybe, what if? But I don't know. I think they can address those needs elsewhere, with at a lower risk.
Yeah. Cheaper too. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
agree. Coming up, Emma and I are going to talk about that cup window. Where do we realistically see the Nashville Predators being when they're back to a serious cup contender? How long is it going to take to get there? We're also going to talk about Phil Tomasino. How much time is he going to spend in the NHL? And maybe the more interesting question is, where is he going to spend time in the NHL? We're going to talk about that coming up. First, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Look, if you are wanting to attend some great summer events, but you want to avoid those ticketing hassles, you need to check out the Game Time app. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to get tickets to your favorite sporting events, concerts, theater, and more. The Game Time app takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They show you your all-in pricing up front so you aren't surprised by excess fees at checkout. You can even get a view from your seat to know exactly what you're buying. Right now, Game Time has great deals on the Savannah Bananas, the Nashville Sounds, the musical Hairspray, Lil Wayne, and friends, Alanis Morissette is coming to Nashville, and I am 100% here for this. With Game Time's lowest price guarantee, if you buy a ticket and then find one in your section and row for less, Game Time's going to credit you 110% of the difference, so you know you're getting the best deal. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, Emma, we are working through mailbag questions. We got a flurry of them. This is a two-part episode because you all had so many great questions for us. Here's a question I think everybody wants to know as they are kind of looking at Andrew Brunette coming in, change in system, new general manager, a reset. Emma, what is a realistic window for Barry Trotz to get this team ready to compete for a Stanley Cup?
People are going to be upset either way. And I think that, again, a lot of the arguments I hear for, here's why we have to go get the Mitch Marners, the Jake Gensels, et cetera, right now, is because you don't want to waste Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi in their
Right.
prime. Because in 4 years, they'll be past their prime. Roman Josi might not even be playing hockey in 4 years. We don't know. Like he'll be 38 at that point. So, I think that that's just a little bit short-sighted, and I understand that this organization values those players, and of course, you would love to see them, be a big part of a real cup run. But those are only two guys, and I think that there is so much more that has to happen to get this team to a level where they can legitimately contend. And I understand the argument of not wanting to waste those guys when they're in their prime.
Right.
But you have to look at the good of the team, the good of the organization, what's going to make them competitive for a long time. And I think that there are too many things that need to happen. We talked about it earlier this week when we were talking about lessons that they can learn from the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers in, what it takes to build a real cup contender. And I think that they're far away from that. They're pretty far, and it's not something that you can just plug and play a couple things and boom, we'll be ready next year because we have Forsberg and Josi. Like, I think it's going to be definitely more of a marathon than a sprint.
Yeah. The one thing that I think makes a difference when you're talking about what the length of the window is what you do in net. And I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I think if Barry Trotz is hoping to get back into some sort of serious deep playoff run, and I think you have to separate deep playoff run with true cup contender. Because I think you can look even this past postseason at some of the teams, and I would say out of these playoff teams, just a handful, I think, really went into the postseason as serious cup contenders. Not that the other teams weren't very, very good, and not that anything can't happen in hockey, but those are almost two different steps. But if Barry Trotz wants to make a deeper playoff push, I think you do that with UC Saros in net. And if you don't have UC Saros in net, it does feel a little bit like you may miss your window with Yossi and Forsberg, unless you bring in someone else, because Yaroslav Askarov, I don't believe, is going to be ready to take this team through an NHL deep postseason run in that brief of a time. Is he phenomenal? He is 100% phenomenal. Is he going to be a great player in the NHL level? I really believe that he is. But that is too short of a development period for it to seem realistic to me. So if you're talking about making a deeper playoff run, if you're talking about turning the page from these first round exits, I can see the Predators in 3 seasons maybe being a little bit closer out of this, gross first round playoff exit situation. But if you're talking about a true cup contender, y'all, it is hard to win a Stanley Cup. And I agree with you. You almost have to have a 3 or 4 season window with a roster that could do it, because you cannot get there once and guarantee you're going to get back. Ask the Nashville Predators how they know. Just ask us how we know. So you have to build a roster that is going to be competitive for 3 or 4 seasons. And I'm not sure Nashville is going to be able to do that in the next 2 to 3 seasons. So I think there's 2 different answers to that question. It's going to be a while. Doesn't mean it's not going to be fun, y'all. It's going to be fun. We're going to have fun. It's the memories we make along the way. But it's tough to win a cup. It's tough to build a cup winning team.
The gift is, it's the journey. It's about the journey, not the destination.
Thank you. It doesn't feel like that when you make the first round exit, but that's true as we're in this reset. It's going to be about the journey, not,
and the friends we make along the way.
Well, right along with that exact same topic, what a great segue, Emma. What are your realistic expectations for next season? I loved this question. What are realistic expectations?
Well, I think now playoffs has to be a realistic expectation. I mean, this past season we saw, making the playoffs at all as being, well, this is just house money. Like, we weren't even supposed to be sniffing the playoffs this year, and now look at us. And so I think that making the playoffs is a realistic expectation this year, and I think it should be the expectation. And I think that, I think a first round win could be a realistic expectation, a first round playoff win, depending on who the matchup is, depending on what this team looks like. You want to be obviously better. So that's how I think, when I think of, expectations for the season as a whole and how I think it will turn out. I think that this is a playoff team. We've seen that it's a playoff team, and the big pieces that helped make it a playoff team are still going to be here. And I think that that's a realistic expectation, and it should be.
Yeah, I agree with you. If the Nashville Predators don't make the playoffs or exit in the first round next season, it is going to feel like a step back. And remember, growth is not linear, and nobody likes growth. That's a separate saying. It's also true. But growth is not linear, but you do need to see Nashville continue to take a step forward in this next season. I think some other pieces, I think you have to be realistic, and I say this with all the love in my Swedish heart, be realistic about, will Gus Nyquist be able to compete at the same level and produce at the same level that he did last season? Not saying he's going to fall apart by any stretch of the imagination, but part of Nashville taking a step forward means you have to have players like Gus Nyquist continue to play as well as he did last season. So that is something that I think is going to be a factor. Also, what can Tommy Novak do? What steps forward individually can he make? And what moves on the blue line, are going to help Nashville offensively and defensively? This is, I think next season is going to be a season of individual growth, hopefully. And if they can kind of collectively capitalize on that, I would agree with you. I think it's a fair expectation to say we want to see Nashville win a playoff series next year for the love, y'all. For the love.
For the love. Yes.
Yes. Coming up, we're going to talk about what Barry Trotz may do this offseason to get Nashville closer to that first round playoff win we're hoping for next season. Let's talk about that. Okay, Emma, we are going through our mailbag questions. Here's a great question. And again, hard to predict, but let's talk about this. How many trades do you expect this offseason from Barry Trotz?
Ooh.
If you were a gambling man,
Which I am not.
that's right.
That's why I don't like these questions.
Yes.
I honestly, I know Barry Trotz, I know that he likes to be out there wheeling and dealing. But I also know, and we've also seen, that he is not going to wheel and deal just for giggles. Like
Right.
he is going to be very calculated and make sure that he is making the right moves. And so I think it's going to depend on what's available. I predict, how about this? I don't know if I can predict how many trades, period. I predict the Predators make at least one trade on draft night. I think he will, that because they have so many picks. They have a lot of picks. They don't need that many picks. And that Jeff Kelty, in the director of scouting and his media availability, kind of alluded to the fact that, like, hey, that's some good trade bait. We got a lot of picks and teams that need picks. But again, just like we've said, just because you have a tradable asset does not mean that you need to trade it for a subpar return. So,
Yes.
but with that in mind, and just with things that I've heard and just kind of my general feeling, I think Barry makes at least one trade at the draft.
I think that's going to be so fun to watch. I agree with you. The draft, I think, is going to be where you really want to focus and see Barry Trotz move. I will say this, we have kind of a small sample size for Barry Trotz as a general manager, only one off season, but man, did he just like hit it right off the bat. Y'all, I was at Lowe's when the clock turned trade time. I was at Lowe's thinking, surely I have time to get home. And we were in Lowe's and I'm like, we got to go. Like Barry Trotz is moving. Like couldn't keep up with him. So not afraid to make moves. I just don't know. I don't know that we're going to see the big moves. And I think people are waiting for big moves. I don't know that this is the offseason we're going to see a lot of big trade deals with Barry Trotz. I agree with you. With the draft capital they have, you got to keep tuned in on draft night. That may be where Barry Trotz makes the biggest offseason splash.
Selfishly, I am going to be at the draft. I'm going to be at the Sphere. Last year's draft, very underwhelming. No big trades. Like, I think the biggest trade on the first night of the draft was Tampa Bay trading Corey Perry to Chicago. Like, seriously, that's it.
Yeah.
Like,
and he's in my backpack of hockey grudges no matter what jersey he has on. Who even cares?
Either way, it's like that's not a big move. Like I think that we were expecting more and didn't really get any. But
yeah,
and we've had now multiple teams. I mean, New Jersey has said that they're open to trading the 10th pick. Utah now. Utah has said that they are open to trading the number 6 pick for the rights return. Now, I don't know what that is, but I mean, whether it's the Predators or not, I think that we could see some fun moves on draft night. And again, selfishly, because I will be making the trip, I would like to have some excitement in my life.
Absolutely. I remember when the draft was here in Nashville and the whisper started that David Poile had thrown out Yaroslav Askarov as a part of a deal. And I will never forget how that made me feel deep in my soul. It wasn't a great feeling. It was a little bit like a roller coaster. So for your sake, Emma, if you're into thrills, I really hope we see some big moves on draft night. And I do think it could happen this year. I do think it could happen this year.
But not if it involves UC Saros. Like, not if it involves UC Saros, or like if it involves trading picks, then yes, I am leaning forward, and I would like to see where this goes.
But
make it worth my trip, Barry. Come on.
yeah. Yeah. We're gonna see what happens. And like Emma said, she's gonna be there. We're gonna get the scoop from Emma as it happens. It's gonna be a wild night. And it's in Las Vegas. So again, anything can happen in Vegas. I got stories. We're not going to talk about them. All
What
right.
happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yes, it does. And for a very good reason, y'all. Whoa. Whoa. Here's another great question we got. Best guess. How many games does Phil Tomasino play in the NHL this season?
I don't know, but
This
I
is
also
so tough.
So this is another one that I know people have a lot of big feelings about it. I understand he's a fan favorite. I think so. Predators fans, and I'm probably not going to endear myself to a lot of people when I say this, but I think Predators fans have a tendency, and you know what? It's not just Predators fans. I think just fans of teams
in general.
But Predators fans have a special knack for it. They like to hang on to these really good memories, and that's not a bad thing in itself, but they remember when something was really, really good one time, and gosh darn it, they will not rest until we get back to that, and we just got to run it back exactly the same way we did it and just get back to that. You know what the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not calling Predators fans insane. It's definitely not what I'm saying, but I think that Phil Tomasino is an example of he had that great season, that fantastic rookie season, kind of surprised everyone, and people are, oh my God, this kid is our future.
Right.
This is going to be so great. And then he struggled after that. And I think, and people get so angry about whenever he's benched, he's out of the lineup, he gets sent to
John Hines
Milwaukee.
took a whooping.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Like, I
social media whooping.
Don't even get me started. And like, I think hopefully this should be some sort of vindication for John Hines that it wasn't just him. Like, Phil Tomasino, it's like you don't know what you don't know as fans. And so fans are just hanging on to that rookie season that Tomasino had, and they think that now anything that happens, it's just the organization is against him, and they're not, they're holding him down and they're not letting him fly. And that's, it's Philip Tomasino is the second coming of Christ, and anything that the organization does like that, it's against him. And that's not the reality. The reality is he did struggle afterwards. And like, if he's being held out of the lineup or if he's being sent back down to Milwaukee, there's a reason for it. And he's a guy, as much as I hate to say it, I'm not saying this will happen, but I'm saying I wouldn't be completely shocked if this happens. He's a perfect candidate, I think, for a change of scenery trade.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I think that he really could use the change of scenery. I don't know where that would be. I just think that, kind of like we were talking about with Laine, different stages in their careers, obviously, but I think similar situation, that it's like he may have hit a plateau where he's at. And I think mentally and, for whatever other reasons, I think he could benefit from a change of scenery trade. Now, I say all of that, meaning that would significantly impact how many games he plays in the NHL next year. Because let's say he gets traded to a team, I don't know, let's say he gets traded to San Jose, and he could play in the NHL right now with San Jose.
Right. 100%.
But if he gets traded to Colorado, like he may be in the AHL a little bit longer. It just depends on that. Or again, let's say he doesn't get traded at all and I don't know what I'm talking about. He stays in Nashville or Milwaukee. If he stays here with this organization, I don't know. I don't know if I see him making the team out of camp.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean he won't make the team, but I don't know, maybe like 50 games, I think would be a very generous estimation of what I could see him playing at the NHL level.
I think the question with Phil Tomasino is maybe not so much how many games he's going to play in the NHL. For me, it comes down to exactly what you're talking about. Where will he play in the NHL? You have to remember that, Phil Tomasino, if he does make the team out of camp, and it comes to a point where Andrew Brunette is not seeing what he wants to see from a 200-foot game. We're not saying Phil Tomasino isn't talented. We're saying that John Hines and Andrew Brunette, different styles, different systems, both of them struggled to pull out of Tomasino something that they were looking for in a more well-rounded 200-foot game. Doesn't mean he can't get there, but he is not waivers exempt anymore, y'all.
So and if we do not want another Ellie Tolvanen situation, so maybe you trade him before it gets to that point.
Yes, because if he starts out in Nashville and it is not going right, you place Phil Tomasino on waivers, and Phil Tomasino is out of here. He is out of here. So I think that's one of those off-season discussions they have to have. And again, don't hear us. We're not saying that Phil Tomasino isn't talented. We're saying that two different coaches with two different systems have worked to pull something out of him, and it's not there yet. It's not there yet. Maybe he'll surprise us in training camp and it will be there, and he'll play 80 games this season for the Nashville Predators. Our lips to God's ears. We don't know. But I do think you have to keep an eye on Phil Tomasino this offseason. I think you have to really watch him in training camp, because if he doesn't produce a 200-foot game that Andrew Brunette feels like he can best utilize with the Predators as they're trying to, again, keep moving forward, keep getting deeper in the postseason, it's going to be interesting to see where Phil Tomasino finishes his NHL career or moves to next in his NHL career. So that's a tough one to predict. We're going to see what happens in this offseason. So those are just some of the mailbag questions that we got. We love your questions. We love getting to talk about the things that you are interested in. If you have questions about the Nashville Predators, know you can always drop them in the comment section of our YouTube videos. You can also tweet them at us at LO_Predators. We're constantly on social media and checking the YouTube videos. We want to hear what your questions are so we can address them as well. Before we sign off on this mailbag episode, though, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you on social media and where they can find your work.
They can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at @AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Hope you all have a great day. We're going to be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.